USS Indianapolis, July 26, 1945. The USS Indianapolis delivered components for the Hiroshima atomic bomb to Tinian Island. After the mission, it sailed to the Philippines. No escort, no warning about Japanese submarines in the area. Just after midnight, July 30th, 2 torpedoes struck. The ship sank in 12 minutes. 300 of 1,195 crew went down with it. 900 men hit the water. Few had life jackets. Here's what makes this unbearable. Nobody reported them missing. 3 stations received distress signals. 1 commander was drunk. Another had ordered his men not to disturb him. The third thought it was a Japanese trap. The men floated for 4 days and 5 nights. Sun baked them. Saltwater poisoning. Dehydration drove them insane. They hallucinated, drank seawater, dove down, thinking the Indianapolis was underwater with supplies. And the sharks. Oceanic whitetips attacked constantly, coming straight up from below. Groups formed circles, kicking and punching. Sometimes it worked. Between 50 and 150 men died from sharks. Most died from exposure. On August 2nd, a routine patrol plane spotted them by accident. Of 900 who survived the sinking, only 316 remained alive. Captain McVeigh was court-martialed for failing to zigzag. Even the Japanese submarine commander testified zigzagging wouldn't have mattered. McVeigh was convicted. Families sent him mail. "Merry Christmas. Our family's holiday would be merrier if you hadn't killed my son." On November 6, 1968, McVeigh shot himself. He was 70. Found clutching a toy sailor from childhood. The Navy exonerated him in 2001, 33 years too late. Julian Kupka, Christmas Eve, 1971. 17-year-old Julian Kupka and her mother boarded Lanza, Flight 508. Lightning struck at 10,000 feet. The plane disintegrated. Julian fell 2 miles through the sky, still strapped to her seat. The rainforest canopy cushioned her fall. She survived. All 91 others died. She woke with a broken collarbone, concussion, gashed arm, 1 eye swollen shut. No supplies, 1 sandal. She found a stream and remembered her father's advice. Water flows to civilization. For 9 days, she waded downstream barefoot. Insects swarmed. Maggots infected her arm. She could feel them under her skin. Day 9, she found a shelter used by loggers. Hours alone. She poured gasoline on her wound, killing 35 maggots. Loggers arrived, gave first aid, took her downriver. She was airlifted to a hospital. Here's the heartbreaking part. When search parties found crash victims, they discovered her mother had also survived the impact. Unable to move from injuries, she died alone days later. Julianne has said she dreads thinking about her mother's final days, possibly hearing Julianne calling but unable to respond. 17 years old, and she survived while her mother died, waiting for help that never came. Aaron Ralston, April 26, 2003. Aaron Ralston was canyoneering alone in Blue John Canyon, Utah. Didn't tell anyone where he was going. An 800-pound boulder shifted and trapped his right hand against the canyon wall. No one knew where he was. No one was coming. 5 days. He tried everything. Chipped at the boulder with his multi-tool. Barely scratched it. Tried a pulley system. Nothing moved. His water ran out. He drank his own urine. On day 5, delirious from dehydration, he realized amputation was the only way out. He broke his forearm bones by torquing them against the boulder until they snapped. Then cut through tissue with his dull knife. Took over an hour. After freeing himself, he rappelled 65 feet one-handed, hiked 6 miles through desert. Found by hikers who called rescue. Helicopter evacuated him. Doctors said he was hours from death. The choice itself is unimaginable, but what makes it heartbreaking is the isolation. 5 days knowing that if he didn't mutilate himself, he'd die there, and nobody would find him for weeks. The calculation required to cut off your own arm. 11 years. Later, he returned to the canyon and retrieved the boulder. It's now displayed in his hometown. Mauro Prosperi. Mauro Prosperi was an Italian police officer and Olympic pentathlete. In 1994, he entered the Marathon des Sables, a 6-day, 160-mile ultramarathon through the Sahara. Competitors carry their own food and tents. Day 4, massive sandstorm. Prosperi kept running after losing sight of other racers. When it cleared, he was lost in Algeria, 180 miles off course. He found an abandoned Muslim shrine and sheltered there. With no food, he killed roosting bats and ate them raw, drank his own urine, licked dew off rocks, sucked moisture from wet wipes. After days of this, assuming he'd never be found, Prosperi slit his wrists with a knife. But the desert heat was so extreme his blood clotted immediately. The wounds sealed themselves. He couldn't even die. Realizing this, he walked back into the desert to find help. 9 days total wandering the Sahara, ate insects and reptiles. Finally stumbled into a village, flown to hospital. Doctors said his liver had nearly failed. Lost 35 pounds. Took months before he could eat solid food. The psychological impact of trying to take your own life and failing, because even death is denied. That's what makes this devastating. Douglas Mawson. Douglas Mawson led an Antarctic expedition. November 10, 1912, he set out with Belgrave Ninnis and Xavier Mertz on a sledding expedition. 3 sledges, best dogs. December 14th, Ninnis broke through a snow bridge into a crevasse. Disappeared with most food, the tent, and strongest dogs. Mawson and Mertz were suddenly 315 miles from base, with minimal supplies. They killed and ate the remaining sled dogs one by one, but dog livers contain toxic vitamin A. Both men suffered hypervitaminosis A, hair falling out, skin peeling off in sheets, organ damage. Mertz deteriorated faster, became delirious, then violent. January 8, 1913, he died in Mawson's arms. Mawson was alone, 100 miles from base, starving, frostbitten, skin falling off. The soles of his feet had separated from tissue beneath. He bound them with bandages to keep walking, fell into crevasses multiple times, barely pulled himself out. After 30 days, February 8, 1913, Mawson stumbled into base camp, lost half his body weight. Companions didn't recognize him, but he'd missed the rescue ship by hours. Had to winter another year in Antarctica. Years later, historians suggested Mawson may have set rations to kill Mertz faster, possibly ate his body. Mawson's descendants deny it. We'll never know. He was later knighted. His face is on the Australian $100 bill. Ernest Shackleton's endurance, August 1914. Ernest Shackleton left England with 27 men aboard the Endurance, planning to cross Antarctica on foot. January 18, 1915. The ship became trapped in pack ice in the Weddell Sea. For 10 months, ice slowly crushed it. October 27, Shackleton ordered abandon ship. The men camped on ice floes, drifting for 5 more months. April 1916, ice broke up. They launched 3 lifeboats, spent 7 brutal days at sea, reached Elephant Island. First solid ground in 497 days. But the island was uninhabited, far from shipping lanes. Shackleton knew they'd die waiting. April 24th, he took 5 men in the James Caird, a 22-foot lifeboat, and sailed 800 miles across the most dangerous ocean on Earth to South Georgia Island. 16 days through hurricane winds and 60-foot waves, landed on the wrong side. Shackleton, Frank Worsley, and Tom Crean hiked across unmapped mountains for 36 hours without stopping. May 20th, stumbled into Stromness whaling station. The manager didn't recognize Shackleton, assumed everyone was dead. 3 rescue attempts for Elephant Island failed, turned back by ice. August 30th, 1916. Shackleton reached them on a Chilean tugboat. Called out, "Are you all right?" Response, "All well." All 28 survived. But here's what's heartbreaking. While Shackleton's celebrated, 3 men from the Ross Sea Party, the expedition's other component laying supply depots, died. When Endurance sank, they had no way of knowing the crossing was canceled. They kept working, kept dying, thinking they were supporting a mission that no longer existed. Shackleton never acknowledged them publicly. They died for nothing. Poon Lim, November 23, 1942. Poon Lim, 25, was second steward on SS Benlamond, sailing from Cape Town to Suriname. German submarine U-172 fired 2 torpedoes. Ship sank in 2 minutes. Poon grabbed a life jacket, jumped before boilers exploded, swam 2 hours through debris, found an 8-foot wooden raft. Only survivor of 53 men, the raft had biscuits, 40 liters of water, chocolate, sugar, flares, a flashlight. Supplies lasted 50 days. Then, nothing. Middle of the Atlantic. He turned flashlight wire into a fishing hook, nails from the raft into larger hooks. Caught rainwater in canvas. Couldn't swim well. Tied rope from raft to his wrist when, entering water, seabirds stole his fish. He caught them instead, soaked them in seawater, dried the meat. But blood attracted sharks. One took his bait. Poon hauled it onto the raft, beat it to death with a water jug, drank liver blood. Out of water for days. Dried the fins. Here's the devastating part. How many times he was almost rescued. A freighter passed, didn't stop, thought he was Japanese or a German decoy. U.S. Navy patrol planes dropped a marker, but a storm pushed him away. A German U-boat circled, looked at him, left. April 5, 1943. Brazilian fishermen found him. 133 days adrift, lost 20 pounds but walked off unassisted. A medical miracle. King George VI awarded him the British Empire Medal. After the war, he tried joining the U.S. Navy. Rejected. Flat feet. The man who survived 133 days at sea couldn't join because of flat feet. Beck Weathers. Beck Weathers, Texas pathologist, paid to join a commercial Everest expedition. May 10, 1996, reached summit but developed severe vision problems during descent. His guide Rob Hall told him to wait, promised to return. A massive storm hit. Hall never came back, dying higher on the mountain. Weathers waited hours in the death zone. Other climbers found him, tried helping him down. He collapsed. Core temperature too low to walk. They made a devastating decision, left him, assuming he'd die within hours. Weathers spent the night exposed at 28,000 feet in hurricane winds, temperatures far below zero. Next morning, climbers found him comatose, right arm frozen solid, face covered in ice. They checked for life, determined he was too far gone, left him again. That afternoon, Weathers regained consciousness, both hands frozen, face frozen, couldn't see, but he stood up and walked back to camp through the storm. When he stumbled in, people screamed. They'd written him off as dead, evacuated by helicopter, one of the highest altitude rescues ever. Doctors amputated his right hand, all fingers on his left, his nose, parts of both feet. 8 people died in that storm. Weathers had been left for dead twice. The decision was medically sound. Nobody thought he could survive. But he did. Now he lives knowing people walked past him thinking he was a corpse. Harrison O'Keefe, May 26, 2013. Harrison O'Keefe was cook aboard Jascon 4, a Nigerian tugboat. The vessel capsized in heavy seas. O'Keefe was in the bathroom when it flipped, scrambled into a 4-foot-high air pocket as water flooded in. The boat sank 100 feet to the ocean floor. O'Keefe was trapped in total darkness in freezing water up to his chest. All 11 other crew dead. He could hear their bodies floating past in the darkness. He breathed trapped air, but it was slowly poisoning with his own carbon dioxide. Hypothermia, surrounded by corpses. Pitch darkness. 100 feet underwater. Authorities assumed everyone dead. Sent a team for body recovery. Day 3. South African diver Nico van Heerden searched the wreckage. Reached into a cabin. A hand grabbed him. Van Heerden said it was the most terrifying moment of his life. Thought a corpse grabbed him, but it was O'Keefe. Still alive after 60 hours. Divers carefully brought him up, stopping to decompress. Spent another 60 hours in decompression chamber. Survived with no permanent physical damage. Never returned to sea. The trauma of 3 days in darkness underwater with dead friends floating past. Nobody recovers from that completely. Stephen Callahan, 1982. Stephen Callahan was sailing solo across the Atlantic. His boat hit an unknown object and sank. Escaped into a 5-foot inflatable raft with minimal supplies. Drifted 76 days covering 1,800 miles. Survived on fish and rainwater. But sharks repeatedly attacked the raft, puncturing it constantly. Spent hours every day patching holes while adrift. Created a makeshift spear from a signal flare, used it to catch fish. The isolation was worse than hunger. 76 days alone, nobody to talk to. Watching the raft slowly deteriorate. Sharks circling constantly. The psychological toll of complete isolation while fighting to stay alive. Every single day knowing you might not make it to tomorrow. Finally rescued by fishermen near Guadeloupe, lost a third of his body weight, but the mental scars lasted longer than the physical recovery. Ada Blackjack. Ada Blackjack was an Inuit woman hired as seamstress for an expedition to Wrangel Island in the Russian Arctic, known as the Polar Bear Maternity Ward. The expedition was catastrophically underprepared. All 4 men died or disappeared over months. Ada was left alone caring for Lorne Knight, who was gravely ill. He eventually died. She was completely alone on one of the most hostile islands on Earth. She'd never hunted before, but taught herself to trap foxes and shoot seals, skills she had to learn or die. 2 years alone. Survived through 2 Arctic winters, rescued in 1923. But because she was indigenous and female, she received almost no recognition. The expedition leader's family even blamed her for the men's deaths, claiming she didn't care for them properly. She survived through incredible resourcefulness and determination, then was blamed for the deaths of the men who had abandoned her to that fate. She died in obscurity in 1983. Only recently has her story been properly recognized. Louis Zamperini. Louis Zamperini was a U.S. bombardier. May 27, 1943. His plane crashed in the Pacific. 3 men survived on a life raft. For 47 days they drifted, drinking rainwater, eating raw birds and fish. Sharks circled constantly, ramming the raft. 1 man, Francis McNamara, died on day 33. Day 47. Zamperini and pilot Russell Phillips spotted land, but it was Japanese-held. They were immediately captured, sent to brutal POW camps. Zamperini endured 2 years of systematic torture by guard Mutsuhiro Watanabe, known as the Bird. He survived the ocean, 47 days of starvation and sharks, only to endure unspeakable suffering in captivity, beaten daily, forced to hold heavy beams overhead for hours, made to race against guards, beaten when he won or lost. He survived the war but struggled with PTSD and alcoholism for years. Eventually found peace through faith. Returned to Japan in 1998 to carry the Olympic torch and attempted to meet his torturers to offer forgiveness. Most, including Watanabe, refused to see him. He lived to 97, but the scars, physical and mental, never fully healed. Norman Ollestad Jr. February 1979. 11-year-old Norman Ollestad Jr. was flying with his father and his father's girlfriend Sandra to a skiing competition. Their small Cessna crashed into the San Gabriel Mountains at 8,200 feet during a winter storm. Norman's father died on impact. Sandra survived initially. The two tried to descend the mountain in a blizzard. Norman watched as Sandra slipped on ice and fell down a chute to her death. He was alone, 11 years old, mountain, winter storm. He descended, by himself, climbing down icy slopes in inadequate clothing, found the next day by rescue teams, sole survivor. What makes this heartbreaking isn't just that he survived, it's that he was a child. He watched his father die, then watched his father's girlfriend die trying to save him. Then he saved himself. At 11. The psychological weight of that, survivor's guilt, the memory of watching people die, the terror of being alone on a mountain, shaped his entire life. He wrote a memoir decades later, still processing the trauma, still asking why he survived when they didn't. Uruguayan Air Force. Flight 571, October 13th, 1972. A plane carrying 45 people, mostly a Uruguayan rugby team, crashed into the Andes at 11,500 feet. 12 died instantly. 33 survivors had candy bars and wine that lasted 1 week. On day 11, they heard on a radio, the search was called off. Everyone thought they were dead. 8 days later, an avalanche buried the fuselage while they slept, killing 8 more, including Nando Parrado's sister. His mother had died in the crash. He'd lost his entire family. Here's the impossible part. At that altitude, their bodies were consuming themselves. They searched for anything edible. Tried eating leather, tore open seat cushions. Nothing. After days of prayer, they made the decision. Eat the bodies of those who died, or die themselves. All but one eventually agreed. 2 months in, Parrado and Roberto Canessa hiked out. They climbed a 15,000-foot mountain with no equipment, wearing 3 pairs of jeans each. 10-day trek. On December 20th, they found a Chilean horseman. Helicopters rescued the remaining 14 on December 22nd. 72 days total. When the world learned about the cannibalism, backlash was immediate. One survivor compared it to the Last Supper. The Catholic Church absolved them. 16 people survived by doing the unthinkable. José Salvador Alvarenga, November 17, 2012. Salvadoran fisherman José Alvarenga set off with 22-year-old Ezequiel Cordoba for a 30-hour fishing trip off Mexico. A storm hit, lasted 5 days, destroyed their motor and radio. Alvarenga's boss sent a search party, gave up after 2 days, assumed they drowned. They survived on raw fish, birds, turtles, drank rainwater when possible, otherwise their own urine and turtle blood. Cordoba was young, couldn't handle it psychologically. He refused to eat raw meat. After 4 months, he died in Alvarenga's arms. Reports say Alvarenga talked to Cordoba's body for weeks, unable to accept he was gone. Eventually pushed the body into the ocean. Drifted alone for 9 more months. 438 days total. The longest anyone has survived alone at sea in a small boat. January 30th, 2014. His boat washed up on Eben Atoll in the Marshall Islands, 6,700 miles from where he started. He'd lost over 60 pounds, hair to his waist. A local couple found him stumbling on the beach. He survived, but Cordoba's family later sued him, claiming he ate their son. The case was dismissed, but the accusation haunts him. He survived the ocean only to be accused of cannibalism. These 15 stories span a century. What connects them isn't just survival, it's what comes after. The guilt, the memory of being left behind, the knowledge that others died while you lived. These people didn't just survive, they survived and then had to live with it. That's what makes them heartbreaking, not the suffering itself, but what remains when the suffering ends. Thanks for watching these 15 impossible stories. If you made it this far, you know what to do. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.